And welcome to the Prescribing Prosperity Podcast with your hosts, John and Alex Sutos. Gentlemen, good to be with you again.
Hi, Bill.
Good to see you again, Bill. Been a long time.
John, it has been. It feels like it's been ages. We are back for part 2 with a really, really fascinating conversation with Charles Suwasing, who is an executive coach and a leadership coach. First half of this conversation was riveting, interesting. And if you didn't hear it, listen to part 2 and go back to listen to part 1. You don't need to stop what you're doing right now, but I would encourage you to go pick up part 1 as well. We left off, John and Alex, on a conversation about remote work and the trend toward companies and organizations beginning to mandate a return to work. It's somewhat controversial for some workers, and others would say it's about time. So with the conversation set up, John and Alex, I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And we just continued that conversation when we were in our break there. That's why I said, I always joke. It's nice to see you again. It's been a long time because we just continued this conversation.
Been all like 5 minutes or something.
Yeah. But when we were on the break there, we were talking about it, and I thought it was a great subject to continue discussing because I think there's a lot of misnomers about the work from home lifestyle, and I'll let Charles in a moment jump in with his perspective on it. But my perspective has been, I'm somebody who's done both extensively. So I when I first started my career, I started in customer service, and it was 2014, and I was there for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and working in an in-person environment. I used to work at an office, 15 York in Toronto, downtown. We were all on the same floor in the customer service division, and it had 2 great benefits. Number one was we had a group of individuals who were all going through the same thing. And when you work in customer service, if anybody's worked in customer service, to put it lightly, it sucks. You get crapped on by, at least 60% of your calls are where people are calling in. Like, I actually had a gentleman one time, he called and he goes, before he even started, I barely said, hello, this is CI Investments. And he goes, hold on, I'm going to yell at you right now. I just want you to know I'm not angry at you, but I need to yell at someone. And thankfully he got me and not one of the other people, because I'm okay. Okay, fine, go and you can swear all you want. Actually, he was really nice about it afterwards. He actually asked me where the office was so he could send me a bottle of scotch to thank me for taking his shit. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. But when you're dealing with difficult situations, aside from being able to share knowledge amongst everybody around you, which was very helpful, it also helps you go through the experience and get through it a little bit better because you have that shared experience and you can immediately get off the phone and you can vent, or you can talk with somebody beside you and just kind of talk through what happened, what could you have done differently, and it helps your mental well-being, I think, more than anything else. And I'll let Charles jump in there before I jump into my next rant about the work from home stuff.
Look, since I've become a coach, I'm a solopreneur. I work from home, so that comes with some challenges. And so it's not foreign to me what it feels like to work remotely, because that's what I do. I don't have a team standing on the other side of this wall. But when I was working on the prime of my career, I was in an office, about 120 people in a downtown office, open concept. I can go to my president and CEO. I can go to my CFO. I can go to my CTO. My boss was literally right behind me. I was in a pod with my team. We had numerous boardrooms and areas we can have side conversations. We can go out in the street and grab a coffee or grab a lunch. But all those opportunities allowed us to know each other. What's our stressors? What are our opportunities? What do I need to learn? Who do I need to talk to next? What's next on the horizon for me? If a client comes into the office, I can go immediately build a rapport with my client. And all of those interactions made the job experience so much richer.
Yeah.
Right. And some of those, I'm going back to 30 years now, maybe 25 years ago. and I still have those relationships. People still remember me in the offices. We'll still connect on whatever the platform is. We'll go out for a beer. I'll get referrals from them, whatever. And those are relationships that have lasted me 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Like that's gold.
Yeah. It's like you went through the battles together. You went through the wars together. Like you talked about, getting back together with those people. Like I actually, one of my friends reached out to me recently, and we went out for beers and a couple of weeks ago. He lives in Mississauga as well, and I haven't seen him in person. Like we periodically will get together for drinks, but that time that we spent together has forever cemented the relationship that we had, and we'll continue to have going forward, because we can always get together. If he calls me up anytime and says, "Hey, can we go for a drink?" Absolutely. I'll go, and we'll spend time together, and we'll always have a great time.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's nice to have that definitive, that place to go, that, that structure of going into the office. And I know not everybody necessarily feels that way, but I know I did it. It was always great to have a structured environment to go to. And I do think it provides two different things. Number one, I think it actually makes you work more efficiently. And Bill and I were talking about it during the break, and the statistics in the States are showing that it's actually, and I assume it's going to be comparable here, that are showing that people are less effective when they're working from home. And I think part of that stems from, it's not that people are necessarily lazy, but when you're at home, there's distractions, but there also tends to be a mentality of, when you can work when you have flexible work hours, you can get things done later. And so you tend to put things off, or instead of, working really quickly because you have a definitive deadline, like I got to get on the train at 5:15, so I got to be done my work at 5. And so you work faster in order to get things done. Subconscious, and I don't think it's an intentional thought by most people, but you start to think, well, what if if I don't finish it now, I'll just get back to it later on, like it's no big deal. And while it's great from a convenience standpoint, it actually ends up hurting your work-life balance, because things end up bleeding out and stretching on a lot longer than they necessarily have to sometimes. And so I've actually wondered a lot recently about the benefits of going back into the office and spending more time, and not only from, the functional standpoint of it being more efficient, but also just from the relationship standpoint. Can we have better relationships with the people that we work with by spending more time with them on a daily basis? Would that help things? Would that improve things? And if there's a way to get better, I'm always willing to explore it. And I'll let you talk about the work efficiency standpoint of it, Charles.
Look at the thing is, we're creatures of habit, right? And I would argue, I think inherently we want to be lazy. Mm-hmm. You don't want to work harder than we have to, mm-hmm. right? And I think working and remote working, highlights some of our inefficiencies or poor behaviors or habits. And I think, to your point, to working from home, working in an office creates a structure in which we know what we have to accomplish between, whether it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever your time is. Yeah. Right. We need structure in our life. We need habits. We need things that could support us to be efficient and productive. When we're at home working, there is too many things that get in the way, right? Yeah. We don't know if the kids are going to get sick. They're going to get called home, or, I'm dealing with this crisis or that crisis, or I got to go out shop for, there's so many things that get in the way of being efficient and productive. So yeah. I agree. Working from home working in an office creates a structure in which we can be more efficient and productive.
Now, that being said, that's great for the administrators, but the salespeople are not in the office.
Well, they have their own types of structures too. If you're on the road and you got to go through meetings and boardroom calls, and all those are the things, you're not working. Not all of them are working tied to their desk, yeah. right? Some of the sales executives I've worked with, their remote is on the road remote. There is going from car to airport to train to whatever meeting. That's their structure. They know they have a routine set up for that. Yeah, they're not just sitting at home waiting.
I wanted to go back to I don't even know if we covered it in the first session, but there's something that intrigues me, and that is how do effective leaders manage great talent. Now, when I think about that, I think about athletics, I think about sports. And here in Toronto, we had the Blue Jays championship teams from the early '90s, and Cito Gaston was the manager of the team, and he was never given proper accolades for the success of the team, because they said, "Well, it was such a great team, you didn't have to do much." And there's been other examples of other teams and other sports where they had the same approach, the Montreal Canadiens in the 70s. Oh, yeah, it's such a great team. You don't really need a good coach. Can you speak to that concept?
Before Charles jumps in, look at the documentary we were just watching on the Dallas Cowboys in the 1990s. I don't know if anybody's seen it yet. It's called America's Team, but Jimmy Johnson was the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and Jerry Jones is the famous owner and general manager and president of the Dallas Cowboys. Famously said, any one of 500 coaches could have coached this team to a Super Bowl. And then nobody has won a Super Bowl. Essentially, they won one without Jimmy Johnson, but it was essentially still his team. And they almost won in spite of the coach that they had at the time, Barry Switzer, who, was accomplished in the college level, but didn't have the same success as an NFL coach. And anyway, long story long, they're now 30 years past their championships, and the motto that Jerry had, which was 500 coaches could have coached this team to a Super Bowl, I don't think carries much weight, but I'll let Charles jump in on that.
Well, look, for me, it's you have to have good talent. You have to hire good talent. Mm-hmm. You have to hire people who actually want to succeed, who want to go to whatever extent it is to be good at their job. Coaches can't play the game. Right. In any of these sports, and I think it's also true in corporate, good leaders are not the ones on the field. They're ones giving clear direction, clear expectations, clear accountability for getting the work done. And they're surrounded by exceptionally smart and talented people. But what I also think what marks a good leader is having the courage to throw their people into the fire and let them do the work. Let them challenge themselves. Give them environments in which they are challenged. They experience adversity. They experience opportunities to grow and to thrive and to feel that they're learning and growing in their competency as whatever it is, whether it's in corporate or sport. I remember my son and I, one of the things, him and I are connected through sports myself. So him and I grew up, in hockey and in soccer, and I coached both sports. And the one thing that I love to do is have these kids learn, man, you can do anything you want. I'm going to throw you into the fire for you to learn how much you have in you. And we're going to learn that way through experimentation and trial and error and whatnot. And they relish those opportunities. They want to be trusted to be put into the critical parts of the game. Whether it's the penalty kicks or the face-offs or whatever, they want to have those experiences to see what their potential is. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's any different in corporate. If a leader sees the potential in their team to grow and expand, a good leader will throw them into it and say, see what happens. Let's experiment. Let's try new things. Let's innovate. Let's see what else potential you've got. And it's those types of employees that thrive. Right? Yeah. They feel energized. They feel challenged. They feel on purpose. They have a sense of meaning, right? And a good leader can point them out.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. A good leader has a sense for that. Oh yeah, no, that person's got the potential.
Yeah.
I'm going to
but you only learn about that potential and their abilities by giving them those opportunities, right? Like you gotta give them a chance to fail, for lack of a better term, in order to see if they are able to succeed.
Well, like going back to what I think we touched on earlier, it's about the relationship too. Mm-hmm. A good coach or a good leader can see good in the people.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to relate to them. You have to be able to empathize and connect with them. You have to build trust with them. And if you see potential in somebody, then grow it. But you have to be a good people person to see that. If you're not going to get the best out of people. Like how many coaches in sports coaches were very dominating, controlling people. They never won anything. Many of them have. You hear about the abuse in the locker room, the vile language, and the productivity on the ice or on the field, wherever, right? successful coaches were one who knew who their players were, who knew what their strengths were, who knew their potential was, and they explored that. They expanded on that. They let it grow, right? One of my favorite coaches is Phil Jackson, the Chicago Bulls. Yeah. He saw all of his players individually, and he knew exactly what their strengths were. Yeah. He knew exactly where their potential, and he exploited it. He worked it.
He coached them differently. He coached different players differently. He knew he had to be harder on Michael than he had to be on, somebody like Dennis Rodman. He knew that if he was a hard ass with Dennis Rodman, that Dennis Rodman would retreat and it wouldn't work. Like you have to know the people underneath you and know how to manage them individually. You can't take a one size fits all approach in many cases.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And they haven't won since Phil Jackson left.
No, not in Chicago.
At least not in Chicago. No.
Yeah. No. And going back to, this is still in the vein of sports, but also in business. Does the approach of the leader depend on where the organization is in its life cycle? In your experience, do you need to have more of a hands-on collaborative approach when the organization is in its growth phase versus more of a hands-off taskmaster approach when the organization's more established? Like, how do you see leadership evolve as an organization changes?
Yes. So I've seen this both in startups, in technology. I've seen it also in biotech and pharmaceuticals, where you have probably a long sort of early stage period, high investment, low return, but you're working to the bone to get things done to the next stage. Right? And those types of leaders, yes, they have to have strategic vision, but they also have to have staying power to get the grunt work out of the way, right? They have to build teams really fast, but also be highly productive. So their focus is different. When you get into later stage growth, and then you have the organization to support you, now you're starting to see revenue and growth and new opportunities. Yeah, the perspective of the leader needs to shift. Right. It may become more external. How do I now foster relationships with stakeholders? How do I foster relationships with local government and policymakers? How do I foster relationships with new customers, et cetera, et cetera? But that early stage is grinding, right? Especially for startups or organizations or prospective businesses with, high initial investment to build a product or a program. You got to be able to roll up your sleeves and get into it every once in a while. But that does change over a period of time. Once you start seeing some traction, some growth, some potential and possibility in whatever it is you're creating. And then it's up for that executive to shift gears and become more of the aspirational, strategic, visionary type leader.
Right. And how do you, if you're somebody who has come in, because it's not uncommon to see people kind of cross over industries and become leaders in a different type of organization. If you're somebody who comes into, let's say you move over to the technology side of the industry, you go into a tech company and you came from another industry. Let's say you came from, some sort of consumer services or consumer goods industry. How do you get people beneath you to buy into your leadership strategy and your style and trust you, as opposed to seeing you as an outsider? Like, what does this guy know? How does he think he's going to manage our organization when he doesn't know? He's never been involved. He's never worked in this industry before. Is that possible, or do you think that's an ill-advised course of action?
Yeah, I would struggle with that one. If you're coming in cold in a net new industry, I would struggle with that. I don't even know if that's a good career move for an executive. But what I could see is executives moving into complementary or tangent industries. So, for example, you might look at somebody who is, and I've worked with executives who have a long history or a long career in, say, healthcare or pharmaceuticals, or in finance, for example. And then they transition into technology. And the technology is actually a complement to the healthcare or to finance. So they're actually bringing a legacy of knowledge and information of what it is to be in these other industries and applying it into a new format, whether it's technology or whatever. So I see that being, an executive moving into a complementary or relatable industry. But it'd be hard pressed for somebody to like say, spent their first career in automotive and then all of a sudden jump into, consumer packaged goods.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Ted.
I was going to say, Charles, can you share with us a couple of illustrations of situations you've gone into and have successfully turned around the situation or improved the situation that's resulted in tangible benefits?
With an executive or a team or both?
Yeah, in any field of endeavor you've been involved as a coach. An example, you walked into an organization, you met with the CEO or whoever you needed to coach, and over the course of time, you got it done, and the satisfaction and all of that.
Well, look, I have a long-standing relationship with an executive. He's a C-suite executive, and I met him as a senior vice president of a part of the organization. This is a biotech company, so he's responsible for producing chemistries that will go into drugs. And he was an individual contributor at first, brilliant guy, high IQ, genius level thinker and designer. Like he can problem solve in moments like his processing power is like fast. Was probably lower on the personal development, personal relationship style of leading and, bringing teams together. But of course, of about 12 months, actually a little bit over, almost nearly 2 years of coaching him, we prepared him for the next level promotion. We prepared him to get into the C-suite executive boardroom, which he is now. And he was also able to start to build relationships around him by being more vulnerable and not getting into his head about, okay, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve this problem? But more asking his team to solve problems. So he's now creating space for him to think about more strategy. And now he's building a team that's really cohesive, really integrated. They are learning to think ahead of him and anticipating his needs. There's a lot of trust starting to build. And the team is much stronger now than ever before under his leadership. But if you look back 3 or 4 years ago, that might not have been the possibility with him back then because he was too busy as an individual contributor. But now him learning how to build solid relationships through being more vulnerable and expressive and practicing things like empathy and whatnot. He's much more engaging as a leader. He's much more enrolling. He actually tells better stories about things that inspire and motivate people. And he's also delegated much more responsibility onto his team, which his team is like embracing. They want the next opportunities for themselves. So that's probably one example I would share with you is that.
That's great. And it sounds to me like someone was, he sounds like a person who was a genius type. Maybe genius is a bit too much, or maybe it isn't. Maybe he is a genius, but it sounds like someone who really was into the micro aspect of what he was doing, and he needs to be pulled back to see the big perspective.
Yes, which is a very hard thing to do when you deal with people who are at genius level thinking.
Right.
Because the problem, the challenge, the vision, they're always working on it. They're always working on it. And sometimes that level of thinking gets in the way of actually creating strong relationships. They're so task-oriented, thinking-oriented, they forget about the relational piece. Like, how do I bring my people along with me? Right? And you go back to guys like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a genius level thinker. He was seeing generations ahead when it comes to technology, but no one was able to catch up to him. Right. Until he stepped aside. Right. But part about leading is, knowing that, I've got to get out of this lane and get into a leadership lane, but that means I've got to rely on my people to do the work. And some leaders can do it. Some people can't.
So it sounds to me, Charles, that what you're saying is leadership and involving as a leader also involves the process of gaining perspective. When you're so close to a situation that you can't see anything around you, you really don't know how you're impacting everyone and everything around you. So you need perspective. So interesting anecdote, the word The word for perspective in Greek is apopsi. And what apopsi means is it's a shortened version of two words, apopsila, which means from a height, from up high.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what perspective is to see things from up high. So you see everything collectively together instead of being very close to it.
Yes. What I refer to as being too caught in the weeds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which you're so detailed oriented and into all the little bits and pieces of the work, but you're not seeing, you're not seeing the forest. You're not seeing the bigger picture. You're not seeing the horizon. And where is this work leading? Right? So yes, an executive needs to get out of the weeds. They need to get out and see the bigger picture or gain broader perspective, right? Many executives need to see beyond their responsibilities of an aspect of the organization and understand the fullness of the organization and how it works, depending on the business that you're in. So if you're in a sales organization and you want to level up in your leadership, you got to know what the product people are doing. You have to know what the comms people are doing. You have to know what the marketing people are doing. You have to know what the customer service people are doing. If you want to grow in your leadership, if you want to become a C-suite executive, you need to know how the business operates outside of your zone.
And we've been focused a lot on this conversation about corporations, but there's leadership in other aspects of life. There's leadership as a parent. There's leadership in other family dynamics. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. Here's the thing, and as a parent myself too, right? Getting caught in the details would be like managing every moment of my child's life. What they drink, what they eat, are they getting to sleep, are they doing their schoolwork, right? And then you can lose the sight of the bigger picture. What do I want for my kid's life? And am I preparing them to become well-regulated, smart, passionate individuals who I hope to have success in their future? Or am I so concerned about what they drink and eat and how much they sleep right now? Mm-hmm. Right? So am I setting up with the right structures? Am I setting up with discipline? Am I setting up with those qualities that I know would be successful to them in the future tense? Or am I worried about what they're going to do right or wrong right now? Right? Some parents can be so short-term focused and lose sight of the bigger picture. Am I preparing my child to be successful?
Are there other aspects of leadership, other illustrations where leadership translates? So can you elaborate a little bit on that? What other than in a family, in a corporation?
Well, in your social environments, even in our play of golf, I'm sure, leadership plays a role in all of those things, right? For me, leadership is about how do I show up in my life most powerfully, most fulfilled, most whatever it is to get what it is I want for myself and other people, right? Leaders to see the opportunity to create from everything and anything. Right. So if it is like, okay, you and I, you guys want to play a round of golf. All right. I could step in as a leader and I could find us a club. I could find us the court. I could find us the date and time. I will schedule it all. That's me taking a lead.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If it's to set up an event or an occasion, I could take the leadership on that too. But for me is seeing the world as that I can create anything I want in this very moment in time.
So before we push further on the life coaching side of things, just one last question on the corporate side. One question that I had was, when is it better to try and course correct with a particular leader versus advising the company to change leadership entirely? I'm sure you've probably had those conversations where you've been approached by an organization and you've had to say to them, I don't think this is a situation that can be remedied. I think but with the existing individual, I think you need to consider, taking a different path. How do you know when that point is?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. But the analogy I use is be slow to hire and quick to fire. Right. Spend more time evaluating you got the right people or the right candidate for that job. interview them, explore them, get references, all those things. And hopefully when they go in there, you got the right person, and you wouldn't have to be in a situation to fire them or let them go. Right. I do think that many organizations hold on to, individuals who are, they got a lot of potential. Yes, they got a lot done, but they also create a lot of dysfunction with the team way too long.
Right.
And it creates a lot of stress. It reduces efficiency and productivity. It degrades morale. It does a lot of things. It does a lot of damage when we have people who are put in positions and they shouldn't be there.
Right.
So I think it has to be smart on an executive to say, we got to let this person go because of all the other implications it has. Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great point, Charles. Now, when it comes to life coaching, because if I understand correctly, you were also involved on the life coaching side. Is there a difference in your approach when it comes to coaching somebody for, a life coach versus an executive coach?
Absolutely. Look at the executive coaching. The parameters are pretty narrow and niche. Mm-hmm. We're looking mostly how are they being productive in their leadership as a piece. But when I do life coaching, there's much more dimensions in which we can coach. It's not just career. Mm-hmm. Maybe they want coaching on their relationship with money. Maybe they want coaching in their relationship with their health and well-being. Maybe they want coaching in their relationship with family and partnership and all those other things. So it opens up a larger spectrum of where we can lead the coaching, right? Mm-hmm. Where do they want to move in their career? Where do they want to move in geography? Where do they want to get into a relationship, or are they leaving a relationship? So any opportunity for them to learn and transform their life is an opportunity for life coaching.
Okay. And what are some of the most common issues that you're dealing with on the life coaching side? Is there one or two that kind of stand out to you that you're dealing with more often than others?
Well, I think it's what drives them to want to reach out to a coach. They're probably going through a process of transformation in their life and needing support to do it. Right. So whether it's whether there's a lot of turbulence going on in the world, is whether it's career, money, relationship, or whatnot, and they need support to go through that phase. Right. Maybe they hit an age milestone and they want to see what's on the other side of being 40 or being 50 or being 60. Right. And they need a support person. They need somebody to talk it out with. Mm-hmm. Right. Like a thought partner to think about what's next for them after this transformation happens or this milestone kicks in.
Yeah. Okay. And, when we're looking at how people arrive at who they are, how much of life coaching is managing their environmental or exogenous factors versus internal endogenous factors? Are we more productive of our environment, or do people tend to naturally fall into certain modalities of thinking and behaving?
Oh, I think that depends on who I'm talking to and where they're from. Look at a lot of my work. I use the mindset of I work the inner person out. Mm-hmm. I work from the internal to the external, not the external to the internal. Right. If we can work on your inner sense of self-worth, your inner perspectives of your life, your inner leader is what I call it. Right. Then we can manifest things externally. Right. So we're working on this. And this also goes with my executive clients too. Their internal belief systems, their values, what gives them a sense of purpose, the things that may get in their way, what I call their limiting beliefs or saboteurs. Those types of things are all internal, right? The conditioning, things that I've adopted about myself, my lack of confidence, my doubt, my sense of worth, my value. All
We're complicated creatures, aren't we?
We're totally complicated creatures.
It's always, and it's usually just between our ears, right?
It's in our ears and it's in our hearts too, right? It's how I feel about myself. How do I feel about my work? It has a lot to say about how I walk this place, right? So whether it's executive coaching or life coaching, I started from the inside, okay? And the deepest question I ask people is, what do you want? What do you want for your life? You know that there's something here for you. You've come for me for help. but what do you deeply want? And that stumps most people because they don't actually think about what they want for themselves, right? So coaching gives them an opportunity to think about what's important, right?
I guess part of the journey through life is we all seem to be in a hurry.
Yeah, well,
and then coaching is about slowing down and perhaps pulling over and saying, what's going on?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Well, look at, two things where we talked about, technology and influence, like technology, like we're so busy with these things and these interactions, we lose track of time. Right. But then, I got to a point in my career where I had to stop and ask myself, is this where I expected myself to be at 40 or at 45? Like, how did I get here? I followed all the breadcrumbs, but, was this by my design or was this given to me? And if I'm now looking forward in my life, am I going to do it on my terms? Am I going to design my career and my life on my terms now? And that required for me even to get really clear what was important for me. Not just for me selfishly, I mean for me and my family and my friends and my community and all that included. What do I want to do? What's important? What do I value? Where do I find meaning and purpose? And a lot of life coaching, a lot of coaching is really getting into the heart of that stuff.
Do you think, Charles, that, and I gotta trying to figure out the best way to put this, the lack of perhaps spirituality in people's lives today is creating this crisis of the inability to see or cope. Or there was a time generations ago when there was a lot more spirituality in people's worlds, or at least it was more structured, I should say. But today we've seemed to have gradually, over the last few generations, tossed all that aside and focused on the material things, and we have forgotten about spirituality. How much would you say that plays a role?
I think that's a large part. I think there's a couple of things. I think one, there's the lack of spirituality or spiritual development is one factor. I think the lack of connection to some of our cultures is another factor. I think social media and celebrity is another one, where people say, I want more of that. I want more of that. I want what they've got. I want this. Consumerism is a big part of that. The material aspect is a big part of that. They think that everything external could solve their internal problems. But it doesn't work like that. Right? You have to work on yourself to feel fulfilled and satisfied and feel like you're doing things with meaning and purpose. It comes from the inside. And so, yes, to your point, I think the lack of spiritual development and lack of spiritual growth is a part of that. Absolutely.
Well, I think, you talked about the importance of meditation earlier, and I think that's what spirituality is a certain degree of a level of meditation that exists, that where you take a moment and you unplug from your current surroundings and you think of something larger than yourself. You are not caught up in the day-to-day of your life, and you just take a moment to reflect and think about things on a different level. And I think that's something that we no longer do on a regular basis. At least a large portion of the population doesn't.
Just as an observer of history, I've noticed the rise of centralized government in the world, and how people have delegated what used to be their own responsibilities to another group of people, and said, I don't need to help my neighbor because my neighbor is getting a check from the government. Now that's a very simplistic example. But if you think about the way society used to be before the 20th century, into these little communities, and everyone knew everyone in the community, and there was a lot more support internally within the community. But now we're all detached. We don't know who our neighbors are. And so we don't have that sense of responsibility. And this delegation to the government, and the government loves the delegation because it gives people the ability to be in power, right? And it's all about their interest in being powerful. But what we give them that power, but we lose out on what makes us human beings.
Yeah, this is a really, really juicy conversation for me, right? This is a really juicy conversation. I think there's a lot of factors we're talking about. It's not even just government. It's how we market products, how we customize services, how we design experiences, which I can totally am in control of, right? Like our North American culture is very individualized. You know, I don't know if you remember this movie Fight Club, where he starts talking about the single packets. Right. Everything is individualized in the single wrappers and all that. Yep. Like everything is personalized now. It's targeted towards me. It's not targeted. It's not about including community. It's not about talking about.
Charles, we don't talk about Fight Club. It's the first rule. Come on, man.
First rule. Yes. Right. But to your point there, it's like what it does do is create a sense of isolation, that I'm alone in this place. Right. That's why remote working is so attractive. Right. Because it's all about me. I get to control my domain. Right. So I think those are things about that hyper individualized, that hyper sense of self, but not really from a spiritual perspective, but more from a materialistic perspective. I think that has had a big impact on how we communicate, how we relate to each other.
And as individuals, you're more easily conquered by, you don't even have to think about it in a militaristic standpoint, but just in a superiority or dominant standpoint. It's easier to dominate someone as an individual rather than as a collective.
Of course.
But one last question to get you out on here, Charles. I want to ask you a little bit about golf, because we got to talk some golf before you go.
Okay, sure.
If as a golf fanatic, what do you think is the biggest impediment to many golfers that they face when they're on the golf course? And how would you coach them?
Okay. I need some clarity here. Who's the golf fanatic, Alexander or Charles?
Charles loves golf. Charles goes golfing all over the world.
All right.
All over the world? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so you're a world traveler, Charles. I know you've golfed in the Bahamas and stuff.
Yeah. Look, I love and appreciate golf more than anything right now, too. It gives me a sense of just release, social, all those things. It's less about the score and more about what else it gives me. But I think the number one impediment about golf is people getting in their heads. Is we think way too hard about everything, right? And I think even like for myself, the biggest learning for me as I enjoy golf is to get out of my head and into my body, get out of my head and connect with the guys that I'm playing with, get out of my head and just experience the environment that I'm in and be grateful that I get to do it.
Yeah.
I got a life that I can afford to do this.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to worrying about every inch of the game of golf.
Yeah.
A bad day on the golf course is better than a good day in the office.
Cheers.
I think that the best advice, I golfed with somebody recently. I don't know if you've ever golfed with Jason at our golf club, Charles. But Jason was great for me in the one round that we played, because, doing lessons, and the lessons are great for me. It's eliminated a lot of my bad habits, but I think sometimes what I have a tendency to do is you go through so many different lessons, and then you get in your mind where you got a checklist of things. You're like, oh, I got to straighten my shoulder. I got to lean back. I got to do this. I got to do that. And at one point, Jason was standing in front of me. And he's watching me getting ready to swing, and he goes, Jesus. I'm not going to say the full language that he said, but he goes, you're an athlete, dude. Like, I used to play a decent level of hockey. He goes, you're an athlete. Hit the effing ball. He said, just feel good in your swing. Like and he was so right, because I used to get up there and I used to hate my drive because I had so many different things I was trying to do, and it felt unnatural and uncomfortable. And he said, just go up and swing. And my score started getting better.
If you could just make it that simple, make it as simple as easy, get out of your head, you'll have a good time. Even if you score 90, you'll have a good time.
Oh, Charles, if I score 90, I'm going to go streaking on the course.
Wait a second. That is not my advice to you.
Charles, 90 is a good score. What are you talking about?
Not when you're Charles. Charles has a higher level of athleticism than we do, Dad. He's an excellent golfer.
Well, my advice to everyone in golf is check your ego at the entrance.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not a game that boosts your confidence, a game that tears you down at every opportunity.
Humbling.
Hey, just have a beer. You'll be okay.
Exactly.
You know what? Right, it's a walk in the park that we should stop ruining.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Bill, any golf anecdotes to take us out here?
Actually, yeah, I have two lessons I learned on a golf course. One is the guy who played golf with me for the first several rounds was a scratch golfer. He and Charles would have a great time on a course. I am like, if I break 100, I'm going to streak down the course. Okay. And it was Mike's whole thing was I was starting to get uptight like you, Alex. I'm like, and he's just like, hey, Bill, do you hear those other guys? And when you're on a course, you can hear other holes, right? And there were these guys over like 2 holes over, and they were saying language we're not going to put into the podcast.
They were F-bombing all over the place.
They were like,
what the
hell? And he goes, do you hear those guys? And I'm like, I was laughing. I said, of course I do. And he goes, you don't want to be like them, man. Just relax. Just relax. Just relax. And I'm like, but Mike, you're really, really good. And I'm like, I suck. And he's like, I don't care. Why should you? And I was like,
I ain't saving anybody's life while on the course.
Exactly.
And no one's paying me to do it either. So, hey, man, the only option I got is enjoy the time.
And the other lesson I learned actually was I went with my son and we got paired at a local, really nice, good public course here. We got paired with another couple. They were an older couple. And his wife played off the women's tees. And she would hit the ball. Not very far, but she'd hit the ball. And what I noticed over time is that she would hit this ball, and it was always, she never missed a fairway. Like down, boom, she'd walk up, hit it, down, boom. Then she'd hit it and go up on the green. And then she would she never 3-putted. She went up on the green. And her score was great. And I looked at her and she goes, it's so much more liberating when you don't think you have to send the ball all the way from tee to green. And I just enjoy the game more. And I thought, boy, just take that lesson home.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Just take that lesson home. Yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation more than I could tell you. It's been fascinating. There's so many things in here. I think people should go back and listen to it over again, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I really appreciate it. If people, Charles, who are listening to this conversation and they might want to reach out to you, get in contact with you, maybe strike up a relationship with you, what is the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
Well, they can easily find me on LinkedIn, or they can come to my website at suwasing.com. So it's SUEWAHSING.com.
Excellent. And John and Alex, thank you for facilitating this conversation as always. Your podcasts are really worth a listen. If people want to listen, people who are listening want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you, Jim?
Best ways to send us an email at info@medwealth.ca. That's info@med-wealth.ca. And they can let us know how to get in touch with them.
That'd be great. And if you're listening to this and you're in a car, you're doing something else, don't worry. That information is in the show notes. You can go get that later and reach out. The one thing you can do right now that takes no break in your concentration is hit the follow button. Become a subscriber if you're not already one, because the beauty of that is that you are then notified every time a new episode drops. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is, if you didn't hear part 1, go back and listen to this part 1 of this particular interview as well. Well worth your time. So until next time, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of John, Alex, and everybody at MedWealth Financial, thank you for taking the time to listen today. Have a great week, great month. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Prescribing Prosperity. Visit our website at med-wealth.ca. That's med-wealth.ca for more information or to connect with us for a consultation. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and their guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of IPC Securities Corporation. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified and licensed financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment or retirement planning. MedWealth Financial Services can provide a private consultation to help you determine the suitability of any guidance discussed on the show.